Good evening, everybody. My name is John Henry Dale.
And I'm Jesse Schulzeberger.
And this is the Beat Broadcast. Welcome to our premiere episode. We're really excited to be here, and we're really excited that you're here, and we would love to hear from all of you in the comments or at thebeatbroadcasters@gmail.com. We're looking for material, and we would love to hear from you of whatever kinds of musical or drum content that you guys want to see. So just want to put that out there. A little bit of background on the show. We started this show basically as a tutorial for getting good audio into Zoom. And then we decided, that's kind of a cool format for sort of a drum-centric talk show where we just talk about beats and music and life. It's not exclusively drum and music content. We might kind of veer off into some other areas, but that's sort of the foundation of what we're doing here. And part of our mission our mission entirely is to entertain, educate, and build community around music and drums. So Jesse, on that note, why don't you give everybody a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jesse Schulzeberger. Live up in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I've been playing drums since I was a kid, and I've since played with a bunch of bands, made a bunch of records, play everything from funk to jazz, rock, roots music. As well as teaching, as well as performing, I also teach drums privately, and I am the author of Foundations of Drumming, which is a beginning to intermediate drum method book.
Very cool. That's very cool. So you guys can find his book, I believe it's on Amazon, right?
Yes, you can find it on Amazon, but you can order it straight through me. You could email us through the Beat Broadcast page.
Cut out the billionaire middleman and just go straight to the man himself.
That's right. That's right. Or you can go through my my Book Baby shop is probably the best way to buy it.
Nice. Yeah, and you're helping support a full-time teacher and drummer here with this, folks. That's Jesse's been teaching for a while, and it's a great book. Let me see. Well, let me give you a little bit of background on myself, actually. So I have been playing drums about 25 years or so, and I started playing drums kind of around a big bonfire at a drum festival or kind of drum workshop weekend in West Virginia. And I used to live in West Virginia. Jesse and I actually used to live at the same place on the Potomac River in Shepherdstown. That's kind of how we got to know each other and start playing music together. And so we've been friends about 20 years. And started playing drums in high school, and then really started studying in earnest in college. Kind of studied jazz, African music, funk, Latin, and then also played a little bit in concert band. And after college, I kind of got more into the electronic music scene and kind of trying to combine those two. So I had a band called Aubergine 3 back in the day, and I've been in a number of different bands, mostly on the kind of electronic meets jazz or Latin fusion tip, but kind of pretty varied all over the map. And more recently, I've been DJing a lot and trying to combine DJing and drumming into sort of a hybrid DJ. But yeah, I've got a lot of different musical interests. And on that note, to sort of satisfy my musical interest, I'm always trying to just educate myself and learn new things. And so one of the concepts we wanted to introduce in this show was a sort of a lesson of the week, and that's going to be kind of led by Jesse, being the drum teacher here. So Jesse, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. This is something I've been working on. Let us know in the comments too if you have any questions as we go. Okay, so one thing I've been working on with some students is trying to kind of break the mold of this is my, they're learning their first fills and they're stuck in this cycle of playing the same kind of stuff. Let's just take a basic 16th note rock drum fill, Now, something like that, or nothing wrong with those fills. they definitely get the job done, but
A little vanilla.
we find that what's that?
It's a little vanilla.
Yeah. So the idea is, let's break that up. Let's break that cycle a little bit, and let's try and get creative on the drums and have some fun. So I use the metaphor of the drum is like your house, and
Okay.
your house is all these different rooms, and you can't occupy necessarily all the rooms at the same time. Some of us have bigger kits or smaller kits. This is pretty modest sized drum set.
Yeah.
Some drummers have these massive mansions.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea here is, let's try and explore some spaces within the drum set, give ourselves some limitations that we can be creative within. So I like to give them, the idea of like, let's start on the snare drum. Let's just explore the snare drum. Let's see if we can get something going.
Sweet.
And they can get creative there. And then we can expand from there. Hopefully everybody's seeing this. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so then we can go, okay, let's start moving that around the kit a little bit, but let's take our time and let's explore this space around the kit, and let's move through that at a slow speed, and let's say everything we want to say before we move on. So I'll just give you a little example of that, how I kind of move around the kit slowly and explore these different sort of tonalities within the instrument. So
Cool.
I
Yeah.
oftentimes have them start on a just 16th note. So we can just go around like so.
And that's really just sort of a single stroke that you're kind of distributing all
It's
over
just
the kit,
single
right?
strokes, and then I'm just using some of the tricks of dynamics, accenting. I'm inserting maybe diddles or flams. From there, of course, we can progress to using rudiments, changing the phrasing, all these little tricks that we have. But really, the thing is moving around the kit, exploring new pathways, and then hopefully getting into some new tonalities, right? Some new spaces that we can occupy maybe when the song needs it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's all about what the music needs.
Right. So something that I like to do with my students is we play a little game, and I say, okay, I'm going to have you play 3 bars of a groove and then a bar of fill. And then every time that fill comes around, I'm going to tell them not what fill to play, but what voicing to play.
Voicing
Okay, then
meaning
they
which
have to-
drum
Voicing meaning what drum.
or what
right?
drums.
Or what drums, or what combination of surfaces.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try this, John Henry. You want to give this a shot?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so your first one, we'll say, okay, your first fill, we'll make it just on the snare drum, okay? And then as you keep playing, I'll shout out some different ideas.
Okay. So any kind of groove I want?
Any kind of groove.
Okay.
Remember, we're kind of working on the fill here, right? So we don't need to overcomplicate things. We just want to get this fill working.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, we're going to put in the snare drum. Good. All right. Now just the tom-toms. Good. All right, let's get, how about just the cymbals? Right, and
Sort
it's
of biffed
very
the ending
easy
there,
to get
but
out
yeah.
of that. Yeah, and it's easy to get out of the comfort zone with this stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, something I've done with them too is I have had these students make a list, say, all right, what are all these different sort of spaces, right? Like tom tom, snare drum, floor tom, and then it's combinations. Like, how about hi hat? You can only play the fill on the hi hat and the snare, or you can only play the fill on the splash cymbal and the floor tom, or just the bass drum. You get some really wild fills, just bass drum, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really fun way to be creative. We all it's hard. You want to keep these kids engaged and active, and you really want to get their hooks in them because you want them to hopefully be lifelong drummers and enjoy drumming and music, and just like we do, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to scare them away. Sometimes, as important as rudiments are, and reading and all this stuff and bookworks and new concepts, that's all great. But we also have to give them time to be creative and let them find their own voice. So this is just one of those ways.
That sounds that's a great I mean, even right there, it just sort of having somebody come in and be like, no, only this. It really stresses the point that limitations are sort of essential for creativity and can be a really great thing. But you're mentioning sort of creating lifelong drummers, and that's sort of a good segue into our next subject. Speaking of lifelong drummers and people who really just sort of played for the music and kind of exemplified that style. One of the sections we wanted to get into here was sort of honoring our influences and heroes, and one of those drummers passed away this week. His name was Tony Allen. He played with Fela Kuti in his Africa 70 band from, I think, 68 to 79, and was really sort of he's almost sort of synonymous with Afrobeat drumming, and he lived and worked in Paris, and I believe that's where he passed away. But yeah, he was one of the primary co-founders of Afrobeat. And Fela actually said at one point, without Tony Allen, there would be no Afrobeat, which is a pretty, heavy and high praise from the guy who basically invented Afrobeat himself, Fela Kuti. Another of Tony Allen's musical colleagues and friends, was Brian Eno, and kind of working in a, sort of a different world of music. But Brian Eno actually described him as perhaps the greatest drummer who has ever lived. So he really earned the accolades of a lot of people in a very wide variety of different music. So, and just so you know, Afrobeat is not to be confused with Afrobeats, which is sort of more of a kind of a polygenre mix of African music with electronic music and so on, and different different kind of more urban styles. So two separate things. So there's some sometimes there's some sampling going on, but yeah, those are two different things. Afrobeats is not Afrobeat. Anyway, I was just going to kind of go over a little kind of a real basic kind of Afrobeat jam, something the type of which you might have heard Tony Allen play on various recordings, and as well as many other drummers who have been influenced by him. And it's a pretty simple beat. He tended to play kind of pretty simply, but in a sort of complex way, if that makes sense. So it just starts with like eighth notes on the hi-hat, and it's a kind of almost like a call and response with the bass drum and the snare here. So I'll just do a little demo here. So it's kind of like, what is that? You're sort of playing the bass drum on the 1E and the snare drum on the 2E sort of thing. And he would kind of really come up with all different sort of I guess polyrhythmic overlays of that type of stuff across the grid of the drums. So sometimes he'd almost start more like with the with the snare instead of the bass drum, like. So yeah, he really mixed it up, and this is, I mean, this is the like, the kind of quick and dirty, and I'm not probably doing him a whole lot of whole lot of justice, but just to kind of give you a little taste of what Afrobeat drumming is all about.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
And I was definitely get on YouTube, check him out if you're not familiar with Tony Allen. And I was watching some videos this week, and I was just after he passed, I kind of went back to some of that stuff, and I was just watching him play, and he was just so fluid, and he had an incredible touch. I noticed he was never hitting the drums hard. He was definitely commanding the bandstand, and the band was he was directing the band, especially with his band. And his touch was just incredible, and his fills were just so tasty. And the way he was connecting dots, and you're right, he would play these very secular groove that just kind of loop through the whole thing. You wouldn't.
Yeah, it almost kind of puts you in a trance, and that's for me, kind of Afrobeat shows in general. It's just this very like a circular rhythm almost that just keeps going and going. It's not so much about flash and extreme kind of virtuosity. It's much more about getting people into the vibe of the music. I think he had kind of like a jazz drummer's touch, and it feels like that's sort of part of what he brought to Afrobeat, was that kind of.
And he sang,
right?
And that was the thing, is he's not just up there playing this stuff, he's singing, which is that's something else. That's a whole nother episode, right? But so Tony Allen, and that's great. He's definitely an influence on both of us, and I think a modern funk music and everything, we all are taken from that. It's there. It's undeniable.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like U.S. bands, Budos Band, Antibalas, Afrobeat Orchestra, that have really been heavily influenced by that whole sound. And I think it even kind of bled over into the sort of the new retro funk and soul sort of sound with like the Dap Kings and Amy Winehouse and that era. You can really hear that sort of touch. With like Homer Steinweiss, the drummer from the Dap Kings. A lot. I think his like so many drummers, his influence is felt in these sometimes very very disparate corners of the music world. So anyway, R.I.P. Tony Allen, rest in power. True legend, and we're sad to see him go, but he really left a mark on the world, and he lived a great life. So props, shout out to Tony Allen.
Yes. So another notable drummer who's born today is Bill Ward from Black Sabbath, and Bill Ward's definitely a big influence on me, especially in the rock drumming world, and incredible drummer, and really helped shape the way rock and metal really went. And
I'm not as familiar with his stuff. Like, what's one song that like somebody might know from the Bill Ward?
Oh, I mean, Iron Man. Everyone knows that,
right.
but there's so much cool stuff. Electric Funeral, all these really cool War Pigs, right? All these really great riffs. And the cool thing about Bill Ward is he had this. He could play he had this feel that sat somewhere between straight and swung. And it was a very, Sabbath would shuffle. I mean, sometimes it was very bluesy, but even when they're kind of playing a straighter rockin' thing, it never really lost that edge of the swing.
It's funny about that because like I feel like you saw that in the 70s a lot. You had like pretty hard bands like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, a bunch of these kind of like more what started to become metal, but wasn't probably called that then. But but they really had a swing to their playing. John Bonham definitely had like a shuffle funk kind of vibe, even though he played really hard. And so I guess Bill Ward did too. So
and I think the important thing to really take into consideration is when those guys were young. Their swing music was very popular.
Right.
Big band, jazz, and that's what they grew up on. You hear this in Charlie Watts from the Stones. A lot of these guys, Ringo,
yeah, for sure.
and a lot of these guys have this, and I think this is because when they were kids, they're hearing so much swing music, and then they learn to kind of play straighter. Right. And they never really totally shook it, and that's what gave those guys all that grease that makes their parts so cool, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we teach young kids to swing, to play jazz, mostly everything they're hearing is pop. It's straight. I mean, yeah, there is some swing stuff in pop music, but so much of it is straight, right?
Yeah.
And so they have to learn to swing, and the swing, the feel, it's almost like a foreign language.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel natural,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so even when you go back to early rock and roll, rock around the clock, do 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 do.
Yeah.
It's the shuffle.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
swinging, and I mean that is rock and roll, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. So happy birthday to Bill Ward. That definitely
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. So let me see. One thing we wanted to figure out is like what, we wanted to definitely emphasize audience participation here. So if you guys have any ideas about stuff you'd like to include in future episodes, hit us up at thebeatbroadcasters@gmail.com. Or you can just come to our Facebook page, facebook.com/ I think it's just Beat Broadcast, right? Let me double check that, make sure that's right.
Sure. And then we're also on YouTube. We're getting that going as well.
Right.
So, if you're interested and, if you have questions or comments for us, please, you can leave them right here in the thing. We've got some people chiming in saying hello.
Very cool.
Some good friends out there, some good drummers
Nice.
chiming in. So that's always great. Shout outs to all them. And, this has been a really fun process for both of us, I think.
Yeah, facebook.com/Beat Broadcast, by the way. So, and also hit up that tip bucket if you guys are so inclined, if you're liking what you're hearing. We're both working musicians, and Jesse especially is full-time teaching and gigging. So, this kind of thing hits the music world pretty hard. So, any support is greatly appreciated.
Sure, and if you're interested in lessons, or anything, just hit us up.
That's
and,
right.
We can
That's
take
right.
care of that.
My man does lessons on Zoom.
Online, or either in Florida or West Virginia, right?
Yeah, you can go global now.
We're out here.
Yeah.
We're global. We're
Hell yeah.
global.
Very cool. Very cool.
So cool. So we're gonna get down to what we like to do the best, and that's actually playing some tunes. And we're gonna take this on home. And we really want to thank everyone for joining us this week, and we're going to be back next week, next Tuesday, 7:00, same time. We're going to do this again.
There you go.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. So, once again, let us know if you have anything you want us to cover, talk about, or if you want to join us on the show. We'd love to have you as a guest.
Absolutely.
We'd like to hear where
This
you're
is
coming from.
Sorry. Absolutely. This is on Zoom, so we can send you the Zoom link, and you can actually get in on the broadcast here, and we'll have like a 3-4 way call. So, hit us up. Very cool. Very cool. What is that? Is that sort of like a? Is that?
Yeah, just a little loop I put together here in the last week or so. Then
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything maybe quite prepared like a loop like that, but I do have I have my Moog little fatty here going. So I'm gonna just try to play around, see if I can get something that sounds pretty interesting. Yeah, let me see here. Let me tell me if you can hear this. Is that coming through?
Yeah, buddy.
Let me turn the tempo down a little bit. Fully improvised arpeggio Moog funk, and that's we'll be getting more into that as the show develops. We'll start getting into some more interesting musical ideas. We definitely want to be playing for you guys as well as discussing music. So
Definitely.
And
so,
again,
hey, before we sign off here, we did have a couple people chime in.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Stevie Watte, Kelly Cornelius, John.
Hey, that's my dad there.
Brian.
Yeah, what's up, Dad? John Therian.
Yeah, there
Dale
he
Jr.
is.
Hey,
And,
speaking. Sorry, go ahead.
There he is, sorry. Hey, and Alex Yates, my star student from
Hell
way
yeah.
back. My
Very
buddy.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so, hey, Brian wants to know why he thought the Grateful Dead needed two drummers. He said, nice. Hey, good question.
Does anyone know
there
the
might
other
have been
drummer besides?
somebody might have thought that was a good idea at one point. Hey, we were talking about this the other day. When it comes down to it, hey, we are up here we're trying to make art and all that, but at the end of the day, we are entertainers.
Yeah.
I tell you, you go see a band that's got two drummers on the stage, I'm pretty entertained.
Yeah. Well,
right?
King Crimson these days is rocking 3 drummers.
No, yeah, that's
And
ridiculous.
they're oh man, I'm so bummed. I think their show got canceled. Speaking of quarantine, shit.
Yeah.
They're
So,
going to play a
who
Wolf
knows?
Trap. On
Who knows why the Grateful, whatever. Allman Brothers did it, right? I mean, they had a conga player in there too. Skinner did it.
Yeah.
It's been done.
But who was the other
honestly,
drummer besides Mickey?
what's that?
I only know Mickey Hart.
Bill Kreutzmann, who is
Oh,
actually
right,
my
Bill Kreutzmann.
favorite of the two. I'm more of a Bill Kreutzmann fan than Mickey
Yeah.
Hart, definitely. And my favorite Grateful Dead stuff
You know.
is like Europe '72,
Yeah.
one drummer.
One drummer.
No,
was
no
Bill
Mickey
Kreutzmann.
Hart. Sorry, Mickey Hart, but I just love it. I think it, especially for the more straight ahead tunes.
I should be pretty embarrassed I don't know that. I think I did in the back of my head. I've seen the Dead like 6 times, by the way. And
it's all good.
with probably both of them, but it's been a while since I've seen them. I think they're touring with John Mayer now, and I think it's kind of
John, right? Yeah, it's Dead and Company.
Dead and
right?
Company, right? They're not calling it the Grateful Dead anymore.
They're not. No.
Right.
So I think Phil Lesh is basically retired from touring. I think is what it's.
Is he?
down to.
Okay.
Yeah. But hey, yeah,
Let me switch up.
seemed like a good idea at the time, right?
Hey man, I'm all about
So-
2 drummer bands.
Yeah.
Just shout out to my dad, John Therian Dale Jr. Speaking of musical influences, my dad was probably the primary musical influence on my life. As a kid, he would play me all kinds of just really amazing world music, quote unquote. I mean, it's sort of a horrible genre name, but I think, it sort of roughly encapsulates, sort of folkloric musics from around the world. And also, he played me a lot of early electronic music, and all that stuff was very, very formative in my kind of musical, musical education and inspiration. So shout out to John Therian-Dale Jr. And
Yeah,
thanks for
definitely
watching,
shout out
Dad.
to our
Really
to our
appreciate it.
folks. I think I had a similar, experience. My dad was my first drum teacher.
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
that's right. Your
and-
dad's a drummer. That's right.
Yeah, and so are my brothers, and my mom plays too. My mom was a music teacher, so that music
I didn't know
family
your mom was
is
a music
definitely
teacher too.
yeah.
Wow, man, it's like the whole family's like.
The whole family.
That's so
And,
cool.
So that's always great. And my extended family are musicians too. So, that's great. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about, this joy of music, getting people inspired, especially young people, getting them hooked, right? And so we can all share the experience together. I think that's really the beauty of what it is that we do. We bring joy to people.
Absolutely.
We bring joy to ourselves. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, that's what it's all about. Creating more joy, creating more music, creating more community around drums, music, and life. So that's the Beat broadcast in a nutshell. And on that note, I think we're gonna call it a wrap for a premiere episode. Again, everybody hit us up, facebook.com/beatbroadcast, and check out the tip bucket at paypal.me/beatbroadcast, I believe. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Any parting words, Jesse?
Thank you all very much. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Peace. Thank you.
Very cool. All right. Let's take us out.